This is the IBJ Podcast for the week of September 19th, 2022, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. You may recall that in 2013, the Indiana Legislature created a path for artisan distillers to produce and sell spirits to the public by the glass, bottle, or case. The hope was to start a micro-distilling industry in Indiana, and one of the first businesses to take the leap was called Hotel Tango Distillery. It was co-founded by husband and wife attorneys Travis and Hilary Barnes. With the help of a handful of investors, they opened a production facility and tasting room in an early 20th century carriage house in the Fletcher Place neighborhood. It very much was a mom-and-pop operation, and it still is. Travis is the CEO, and Hilary is the chief legal officer. But in 8 years, it has grown to 3 tasting rooms in Indiana, and retail sales in liquor stores, supermarkets, wine shops, and bars in 25 states, and on 120 military bases around the world. In 2021, Hotel Tango was honored by IBJ in our annual Fast 25 publication, charting the growth of the fastest growing companies in central Indiana. It reported revenue of $4.3 million in 2020, a 127% increase from its revenue in 2018. Now, for 2022, Travis Barnes expects total sales of about $6 million. Now, if you detect a hint of military culture in the name Hotel Tango, not to mention its deal with U.S. military commissaries, you get a gold star. Travis is a former Marine who served in the elite Special Operations Reconnaissance Force. He enlisted right after 9/11, and it turned out to be a life-changing experience, going well beyond some of the serious injuries that he suffered in Iraq. A lot of what he learned in the military is encoded in the values and processes of Hotel Tango. The concept of discipline is central to the Marine Corps identity, and it also has become a central tenet of the Hotel Tango brand. Travis Barnes is our guest this week to talk about Hotel Tango's creation, its rocketing sales, and how one of the state's first micro-distilleries could establish such a big footprint in less than a decade. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Travis Barnes, co-founder and CEO of Hotel Tango Distillery. Thank you for making time today.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So you opened the first Hotel Tango micro-distillery and tasting room in 2014 in the Fletcher Place neighborhood, correct?
Yes, sir. We were one of the first 4 in the state to open since Prohibition.
It seems like a lot has happened in 8 years.
Yes. Absolutely.
Were you aiming for this kind of growth at the beginning? Did you have any grand ambition, or did ambition maybe come more in stages?
Yeah, I think it feels, it was definitely always part of the plan to grow. Looking back now, it feels, two-sided. On some days, I feel like we've come such a long way on, to go back to just the one tasting room and to now where we're at, we're distributed in 25 states. We're in 120 military bases. We're in 6 countries with the United States Navy. Sometimes it feels like we haven't grown fast enough, almost like we should have gotten farther at this point.
Wow, that's super interesting. I would think that 8 years would just go by in a flash.
Some days, I think that, the years go by quick, the days go by slow sometimes. So it's, always a grind, but when you look back, it always seems to have gone by pretty quick.
So let's take stock of your operations. You mentioned a few things we'll touch on in a second, but there are 3 tasting rooms. There's the original Fletcher Place. There's one that opened at about the same time in Fort Wayne. Is that right?
Fort Wayne opened in 2017, a couple years later, and then our place in Zionsville opened in 2021.
So 2021, that was a pretty hairy time to be opening any kind of retail style business. How are things going right now?
Going great. It's been very well received. Zionsville has been a great town for us to open up in. But yeah, it's we always thought that the tasting rooms were a great way for us to expand our presence, and it gives a nice halo effect, I think, for our brand. It allows people to come in and experience both our product through our cocktails and through samplings of just the products by themselves.
Now, I don't know anything about spirits because I'm the world's biggest lightweight. My wife is a public high school teacher, so she drinks a little bit.
Right?
And I just mean a little bit. And so just last night, I am looking for a juice box for our 6-year-old's school lunch. And I make the connection. There is a bottle of Hotel Tango Limoncello in one of our kitchen cabinets. And I'm like, wait a second, that's the guy I'm interviewing. Can you give me a sense of the range of products you have now?
So right now we have 10 products that were all born out of our tasting room. So we, under the Indiana law, we were only allowed to sell what we were producing in our distillery. So that would really made it a focus for us to be able to give folks a wide range within kind of the overall spectrum of the cocktail world. So we knew that we had to expand just beyond whiskey to fulfill that portfolio. So we make a vodka, a rum, a gin, a limoncello, an orangecello, a cherry liqueur. We have a high rye whiskey, a wheated bourbon, a reserve bourbon, and now our newest product is our Schmallow, which is a toasted marshmallow bourbon.
Okay. How did you get the toasted marshmallow taste in the bourbon?
So originally, this was born out of a cocktail that was being made with infused bourbon and marshmallows in our tasting room, and it was one of our best sellers. And our customers said, "Man, this is terrific. We'd like to just take this home in a bottle." So, kind of as all good, I think R&D goes, we were able to go through and refine our process and figure out a way to take it from a cocktail to a bottle. So we start with a bourbon base, and then we use artificial natural flavorings to produce this toasted marshmallow flavored bourbon.
How do you R&D that? You guys did it all yourself?
Yes, sir.
That's incredible.
So again, we have a great team both on the bartending side and in our distilling side, and they have a kind of a open door policy on where innovation happens. So what we hear from customers is generally whether or not it's a very avant-garde product or more mainstream. This was again a cocktail that was it was an old-fashioned cocktail, but it was made with marshmallows and a graham cracker crust rim, and folks just had a great reception to it and really wanted to have more of it. So we followed their lead, listened to our customer, and put it into a bottle.
Maybe you just said this before and I just didn't process it right, but it would seem like the tasting rooms now in part would almost serve as like a proof of concept area where you get an idea, you brew it, and then you try it on your customers before you try to put it in retail.
Absolutely. That's 100% accurate. We listen to what our folks say before we would ever take anything out into the distribution market. It really is born out of those tasting rooms and out of those cocktails.
And you mentioned before how you were like the fourth distillery in Indiana since Prohibition ended. Is that correct?
So when the Indiana law opened up back in 2014, we were one of 4 in the state that were able to get our license initially to be able to open up as an artisan. That's the keyword, distillery, which means we were able to produce on site and sell directly to customers without going through the 3-tier system through a distributor. So we could produce on site, sell directly to customers.
Right. And state law had just then loosened up. I mean, I think as you're referring to,
yes,
about being able to make and sell your own spirits.
Yes. The beer has been available for 20 plus years, and this was the first time that they allowed spirits.
And you just happen to have been sort of in that mind space at the right time.
Yeah, we'd been watching the law for a few years. It had actually gone through the Indiana Legislature for, I believe, 2 or 3 times before it finally passed. So we were kind of hedging our bets that, okay, this is going to be the year we should go after our licensing on the federal side first, because that was a big key that in order to get your Indiana license, you first had to have your federal license. So we went and got that first, and then the Indiana license was basically a rubber stamp. There were a few more processes we had to go through, but essentially that was the big piece that we had to get our the big okay from the feds.
Okay, so you mentioned this before, but how many states are your products available?
So currently we're sold in 25 states across the United States, 120 military bases, and we're in 6 countries through the United States Navy.
And the different kinds of places where I could find your product, be grocery stores, liquor stores?
Yeah, everywhere from, Walmart, Kroger, Meijer, Publix, Costco, Rite Aid. We've really targeted kind of the big box stores across the U.S., Twins, Total Wine, those sorts of things. And then here locally, Crown, Big Red are obviously big supporters of ours. So it's been great.
So on one hand, I think of you guys as a mom and pop business. You literally are a mom and pop.
Yes.
But I mean, that's a pretty big reach. And I think you alluded to this before. You really needed a distributor to do that.
Absolutely. So part of the 3-tier system in every state, it's a little bit different, but there's suppliers like us. There's distributors such as an RNDC or a Southern Wine and Spirits or Johnson Brothers, and then the retailer side. So you have to go through each one before you get to an actual customer at the end of the day.
Okay. And your distributor?
So we have a few.
Oh, okay.
But our main is RNDC here in Indiana.
Oh, it's Indiana based?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know that there are really big national distributors that have, big relationships with big spirit makers. Are those the kind of places that would be interested in you, or does it really help to have an Indiana-based distributor?
So RNDC is one of the biggest in the United States. I believe they're the second largest after Southern Wine and Spirits. And so, yes, it's huge. We're in, I think, 10 or 11 states with RNDC right now.
And how do you get on a military base? In a commissary on a military base?
You ask really nicely. Actually, it's a very interesting process. There's one buyer per branch in each of the military branches that are all based around the United States, and they make the choice twice a year on what products to bring in and shelve in those particular stores. So we knocked on a ton of doors. We lobbied our legislatures, congressmen and senators to help kind of make those introductions and get us in front of those people. Because at the end of the day, they don't want to bring in anything that might be too big for us initially. So that was part of the concern, that they wanted to make sure we had enough product to be able to service the United States Navy or the Army or the Air Force. So once we got in front of them, we were able to get into a couple bases, and then from there grow and expand to where we're at today.
Did it help that you had authentic connection to the armed services?
It definitely helped get our foot in the door, but I would say that it wasn't the main reason. I think that it was sophistication and our ability to work through the matrix and the administrative processes that really sold us on our ability to get into the military. Beyond that, I think that we spoke the language. That helped a lot. Beyond the yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, sir part, that we were able to get on bases, to do tastings, to do samplings, to support the product once we got on base, which a lot of other brands just don't do or don't know how to do. So that was a huge advantage for us.
So last year, how many barrels of product did you produce?
Last year, we did 2,000 barrels that we produced.
How much do you think it'll be this year?
Somewhere around 3,000.
Oh, that's huge. Why so much growth?
So with bourbon, we've always got to look out 2, 4, and 6 years as we want to grow into our product. So we're always kind of using a little bit of Kentucky windage to look over the horizon to shoot at. And we know that our goal is to continue to grow at somewhere between 50 and 100% for the next several years. And that's where we've got to continue to making it out more and more every year. So we've got to double down on brown, as we like to say.
So that is to continue to produce the product because it needs to age.
Correct. So what we make this year, those 3,000 barrels will sit in a barn somewhere for at least 2 years, some of it 4 years and some of it 6 years before it will ever get into a bottle.
Gotcha. So production isn't the same thing as sales.
Correct. We need patience both on the time to make the product, to let it sit, and on the money, because we won't recollect that for several years.
Where are your production facilities?
So we produce here in Indiana, and then we contract distill with some folks out of Ohio.
Oh, now how does that work?
So a lot of folks use a contract distilling as a means to when their production has reached its capacity. So our recipe, their equipment, and essentially we've made some very good friends over there that have unlimited capacity, but they can use our corn, our wheat, our barley, and to our specifications and produce over there. And then we bring the barrels here to sit in Indiana.
So whatever capacity you had in Indiana, you had maxed out.
Correct.
So you needed some more production.
Correct.
Okay. So between here, did I hear this correctly? There's a something on 16th Street or 10th Street?
So that's where our main production facility is located up.
Where is that?
On 16th Street in the Monon, Tinker Building.
Oh, the Tinker Building. Yep. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, my son plays soccer.
Yeah. Yep.
Just right next door.
Yep.
So 8 years after founding the first micro-distillery and tasting room, I'm sure you have challenges now that you just could not have imagined 8 years ago. What is the biggest thing you're worried about right now?
Really, I would say where and how we grow. I think that we've done a lot of hunting out across those 25 states. And I think that we're shifting into more farming to harvest a little bit more growth out of each of those markets to make them more mature.
Farming, like that's a sales term.
Correct. Sorry. So yes.
That's okay.
Term of art.
We're talking about corn and mash and something. Right. We're talking about farming.
So instead of expanding, we've made a decision to not necessarily go out and expand to California yet. And the reason being is it would take a ton of capital to go out there and really make a mark in that big of a market, right? So instead, I think that we can focus back in on growing in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Kentucky to really expand in those markets. I don't think that we've necessarily even scratched the surface on penetrating those markets yet.
So is that your job at the home offices of Hotel Tango to find more people to buy your stuff, or is a distributor help you at all?
Both, I would say. It's a combined effort. That's part of the relationship, the partnership, that they really need to get it onto the shelves, and then we've got to get it off the shelves, so to speak. So I've got to go out and convince folks to pick Hotel Tango instead of Jack Daniel's.
Mm-hmm. And so in those markets also, you need to worry about advertising to the extent that you can. And
that's a huge part of it. And that's a very competitive part of it as well, an expensive part of it.
And so at some point, I'm guessing they didn't teach advertising in Recon?
No.
In the Marines. So at some point, you get to the point where you're big enough, you need a lot more brain power in the office. Was there a point at which you're like, man, we really need to grow this executive team?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a wonderful young group of executives that have helped grow this company. Our executive team is wonderful in-house, but we've used Ditto Marketing as our PR firm that has done a great job of kind of getting the word out there organically and naturally for us. And also Y&L has been a big part of helping design some of our bottles and shelf talkers and things like that.
And yeah, both of those Indianapolis firms.
Indianapolis, they're great marketing firms.
I don't know if you have a whiteboard, but what would be the couple of things that you'd want to make sure you get done in the next 6 months or so?
Really understanding, I think, what our goals are for next year. So everything in our world is at least 6 months out. So if we didn't plan for Christmas, POS, point of sale stuff in June, then it's already too late. So we're already looking for Valentine's Day next year. We're looking toward Memorial Day for Pride Month next year. So we're always kind of looking out into where we can penetrate the market and how we can serve it better.
Okay, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 625 attorneys across 11 offices, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast and my conversation with Travis Barnes, co-founder and CEO of Hotel Tango Distillery. So I want to go back a little bit before the founding of the company, because your military service is literally encoded into the name of the company, but also in its values and its processes. So you grew up in Albion,
yes, sir,
in northeastern Indiana. You were enrolled in Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. I think now the Mastodons, if I'm not.
Go Dons, right.
Yeah. And you were enrolled there during 9/11.
Yes.
And you felt a call to duty and joined the Marines. And then eventually the elite special operations reconnaissance force. And I gather just some things that we've written about you before here at IBJ, you found yourself in a way in the Marines, or am I kind of overgeneralizing?
No, I absolutely think that's 100% correct. In the infantry, you have a lot of time to sit and think about what you want to do when you get out and you're done with your service. And I did a lot of that. And didn't necessarily think that distilling was going to be the end goal, but I knew that I wanted to do something to help, one, serve back to the military, which I think we do with our company, but also incorporate the skills that I learned while I was in the military into whatever I was doing after it. I think that you get to see the world through a different set of lenses while you're in the military, especially in a combat zone. And then when you come back home, you really get to appreciate the things that you did learn while you were there. So I'm hoping to take those lessons and skill sets that I learned there and bring them forward into what I do now.
I mentioned before we started the interview that I have a cousin who also was in recon. And for him, I mean, it was really a life-changing event because I think it helped give him focus and it gave him a real appreciation for discipline and process. Was that your experience as well?
Oh, 100%. I think that, it just teaches you to appreciate the small details, to incorporate those into your daily systems, your daily life, from getting out of bed and making your bed to how you treat other people, how you see the world. It really gives you a different look, a different set of lenses to look through.
So how long did you serve and where did you serve?
So I ended up serving about 4.5 years. Most of my time was spent in Iraq. I did 3 tours. Each tour was about 9 months. And I did the initial push into Baghdad and then came back for 2 follow-on tours in Fallujah and Ramadi.
And during your service, you encountered several IEDs and were very seriously injured. Can you tell us a little bit about those injuries and whether or not you have any kind of lingering issues from those?
So, I was hit by several IEDs and during my second and third tour, and then PTSD and traumatic brain injury were the ultimate results of those, and that still have lingering effects, I would say. But I manage and have worked through a lot of those issues, and I've got a great family and wife that have helped deal with a lot of those. But yeah.
After you get hit by the first IED, I would assume they just get to go home. Is that not not the case?
Motrin and water.
You're joking.
No, get back out there. Get back on the horse. Hurry up.
So it just kept happening.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yep.
I probably should do this now before I forget. Thank you for your service.
No, I appreciate it. Again,
that's amazing.
I always feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the room. Proud of my service and very, very happy to be back home. And, now with my wife and daughters, it's, I'm living the dream, man. Like you're looking at the American dream right now.
Pardon me for probing just a little bit, but do they diagnose you with a traumatic brain injury there, or is that something you find out about after you leave the service?
After. So went through a whole diagnostics of tests, MRIs, brain scans, and they found lesions essentially on my brain. And that's how they diagnosed it.
So you had an honorable discharge,
yes,
returned to civilian life, and entered Indiana University Robert H. McKinney School of Law here in Indianapolis. And you met your wife, Hilary. Can you tell us just kind of how you guys met?
It was our first class, first semester. She couldn't keep her hands off me.
Just
kidding.
On.
I'm just kidding. I think we found out that we were both pilots, and that was kind of our initial interest, and that's how we kind of actually came up with the name Hotel Tango, was the military phonetic alphabet, and how we used those within flying. And then her name is Hilary, my name is Travis, and so it was HT Hotel Tango. So that's how we got there.
So how is it that you got then involved in making spirits? Were you a hobbyist? Did you answer an ad in a comic book? How do you do that?
I think that it started while we were in law school, while we were paying attention to what was happening in the legislature, that I found an interest in it. I'd been brewing beer for a while and kind of got the itch and thought, well, this is a pretty big opportunity that I see coming, and we should take a shot at it, and really took it from hobby status to career status.
Did you at some point decide, okay, I'm in law school, but I really don't want to be a lawyer?
Yeah, I think that I realized that pretty early on in the process that I enjoyed law school, loved every minute of it, but didn't necessarily want to be I would say, traditional lawyer, go in and write memos and briefs and do that kind of thing.
Billable office hours,
right?
Stay late.
No,
whatever it is.
I wanted to be a little bit more free range, I guess.
And so you decided you're going to start experimenting.
Yes, sir.
And you did. How do you experiment with that at home?
I don't know if I want to.
Oh, is it dangerous? Did you break some municipal laws?
At the time, it was pretty loose. I think that it was more of just conceptual, I think, that we could do it until we were actually up and running. And that was part of it, that, for the federal licenses, you essentially have to be a distillery without operating. So that was a big key. If you had to have the equipment, you had to have the building, the zoning, the license, or the insurance. You had to have everything in place to be a distillery, but without turning on any of the equipment, which was extremely challenging, to find funding and get folks on board to be a part of, especially as we were one of the first in the state to do it in 70 years.
So we reported, I think, when you still were planning on opening the first location, that you plan to invest about $400,000 to get the Fletcher Place project off the ground. Is that about how much you ended up investing?
I think we did it with less than that. I think we did it with actually around $200,000.
And was that all your money, or did you have loans or investors or both?
No, so we went out and found, we first we went to every, bank in town and was told no. First,
there you go.
You're too young, no experience, first time the laws changed. So then we actually found we went to a whiskey tasting here at the University Club, and we found there was a group of gentlemen there that I had no idea who they were, and it really turned into an episode of Shark Tank. So I went in there and I was given 10 minutes to make my pitch, and I had 4 guys that called me the next morning and said, "We'd love to be a part of this."
That's incredible. Was that put together with people understanding that, this would be, due to the change in legislation, that this would be something?
Yeah. So I kind of laid out
So
I laid out kind of what the landscape was, where we had come. We had just gotten our license from the feds. We were just about to get our license from the state. So we were a little bit along. We had some product. We had our still. So I think we knew just enough to be dangerous at that point. And they bought in and said, "Yeah, let's do this." And those 4 guys are still part of the company, still investors. 2 of them are on my board. So they're pillars in Indianapolis. They're wonderful people. They've been great to me, and now friends and part of the family.
So on the bottle, I don't know if it says this on Schmalo or not, but I think it typically says distilled with discipline.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going back to the military theme again. What does that mean? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think it's the processes, the way we select. We do everything from the way we select the grain, the way that we actually run the recipe, that we run the still, that we dump the barrels, that we fill the bottles, that we label the bottles, how we sell, how we treat one another within the company. It's all encompassing. When we say distilled with discipline, it really means the whole company, not just what's in the bottle or on the label, but it's really kind of an ethos that runs through every part of what we do in the company, how we make the cocktails.
You seem like a really laid back guy. You don't seem like the great Santini, but I guess I'm struggling with my idea of what discipline is. You can be laid back and disciplined at the same time. Yeah,
I think that discipline comes in many forms. I think that that's, something I learned while I was at Recon, that, you don't have to be the hard charging guy out front all the time to be a disciplined leader. I think that you can be a little bit more reserved and still have great leadership aspects or attributes, and still have a very disciplined mindset. And I think that that's what we try to come off as, is you can be disciplined without being rigid, so to speak, that you can have a fun side and still be disciplined. And I think that comes through with how we operate our company.
Now, I know at the beginning you were interested in hiring military veterans. Was that something that you're able to do?
Absolutely. So I believe we've got 5 or 6 on staff at this point, maybe a couple more. But yeah, it's I will say a little bit harder than what I initially thought, especially within kind of how the company's grown and where we've grown. We just entered the Skill Bridge program to bring on a couple veterans that are getting out of military and transitioning over to the civilian side. So we're always looking. That's definitely a gold star on your resume if you're applying at Hotel Tango, for sure. But yeah.
Okay. How many full-time and part-time employees do you have now total?
I believe we're at 50 full-time, and we've probably got another 20, 25 part-time around the country that do tastings and kind of our brand ambassadors for us on military bases. A lot of military spouses that do that for us. So
I take it sales have been increasing so far this year. And that, in fact, is the plan, is to continue to grow sales. Can you give me a sense of how?
So yeah, we're up about 45% this year, and I think that's somewhere we'll shake out by the end of January.
So 45% in terms of
case volume. So all of our products, our vodka, our gin, our vodka, our rum, our bourbon, all of those cases that go out through distribution, we're selling 45% more than we did last year.
So how many cases would that be by the end of the year?
So we're shooting for around 36,000 this year.
Okay. There's the cases, and forgive me, I am a dunce when it comes to this kind of thing.
No.
What is in a case?
Six bottles.
6 bottles.
Yes.
Okay. In terms of a dollar value for sales, like you guys were in our Fast 25 list of the fastest growing companies in the Indianapolis area last year. And I believe the figure, I think, was $4.3 million dollar-wise in sales. Do you have a sense of what it's going to be this year?
So I think we're headed for somewhere around the $6 million mark this year, total sales. That includes both our distribution and tasting rooms, which was included in that last year.
Okay. So that is both what I would find in retail and also when I go and get my gin and cucumber
Correct.
cocktail.
Yes, sir.
Then at Fletcher Place. Okay. Now in 2019, you received, I know this because we wrote about it, $2 million from new investors. And I think that was intended to establish and strengthen the retail presence. Has there been any major fundraisers since then?
Not yet, but we're always looking to expand and grow the company. So we'll at some point probably be looking for more funds to grow.
Are you guys big enough at this point that you would be an acquisition target?
Well, you'd have to ask the acquirers that, I guess.
Maybe the better question is, have you been asked?
We have been approached by some folks, but we're, I think still in high growth mode. I think that we've still got a little bit of runway that we'd like to get to. I'll just say it like this. My goal is to grow. I mean, I want to continue to expand. If I could be the first distillery on Mars, I would be. So that's where my head is at. So
as far as you're concerned, you could you do this for another 25 years. This could be your job for the rest of your life and you'd be happy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is, an unexpected career path that I didn't necessarily know how long the ride would be when I got into it, but it's become a passion. It's so fun to come into work every day. I love what I get to do. I love the people that I get to work around. I love the product that we get to make. It's, I can't think of, if anything keeps me up at night, it's what would I do after this?
Oh, what would you do after this?
I don't know, be a carpenter or something, I guess,
So when you guys have board meetings, your investors are not saying, when are we going to get our money back? Everybody's happy with the way
don't
things
give
are
them
going.
any ideas.
I will not. I'm sure it never occurred to them.
No, not yet. I think that everybody's enjoying the ride. I think that, everybody's in a good spot right now, and we're just, again, focused on growth. And as long as I think that's the biggest part is I think that everybody sees that year over year, we continue to grow. We continue to, have these unbelievable organic, really growth years that it just is, they want to continue to see where this spaceship goes.
Well, let's check back in a couple of years and see how things go.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for your time.
Thanks, sir.
My thanks again to Travis Barnes. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are several stories in the latest issue of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, as you know, Duke Realty Corporation was founded in Indianapolis in 1972 and became one of the biggest real estate investment trusts in the Midwest. In June, it entered into a $26 billion merger agreement that will make it a small part of a West Coast-based developer. IBJ's Mickey Shuey documents the last days of Duke Realty. Also in this week's issue, John Russell charts the escalating tensions between emergency room physicians and insurance companies over reimbursement rates. And Dave Lindquist reports on the effort to boost businesses southeast of downtown by creating a new label for the area, Fountain Fletcher. But it's been met with some confusion and criticism since it encompasses neighborhoods that are already well established and have distinct identities. Again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it is easier to access all of the latest local news about business and politics and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. And here's a new development. We have wrapped all of IBJ's content together with all of the stories, columns, and podcasts from our sister publication, Inside Indiana Business. And now it works out to just about $3 per week for actionable information about every notable business development across the state. You won't find Indiana's story told with this kind of breadth and depth anywhere else. Just go to IBJ.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ Podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.